I am the heart of Mandalay, where heat trembles above the earth and the sky stretches wide like a ceremonial canopy. There stands a palace that once held the final heartbeat of a civilization. This is Mandalay Palace, the last royal palace of Burma, and the final stage upon which 1,000 years of monarchy came quietly to an end. The palace was completed in 1859 under the reign of King Mindon, a ruler remembered not only for power, but for restraint and reform, at a time when the world beyond Burma's borders was rapidly changing. King Mindon sought to anchor his kingdom in ancient order. The palace was built according to cosmological principles drawn from Buddhist and Hindu traditions, a sacred geometry that placed the ruler at the center of the universe. This was not metaphor, it was architecture as belief. The entire complex formed a perfect square, each side measuring just over 2 kilometers. Around it stretched a wide moat, calm and deliberate, its surface reflecting the palace walls like a mirror of authority. Water here was not only defense, it was symbolism, the boundary between the ordinary world and the royal one. Four great gates pierced the walls, aligned precisely with the cardinal directions: north, south, east, west. Each entrance marked a point in the cosmic order. From these gates, straight ceremonial roads led inward toward the heart of the complex, where the royal city rose. At the very center stood the palace buildings themselves, constructed almost entirely from teak wood, the most valuable and resilient material in the region. Teak resisted rock, insects, and time. It was chosen not simply for beauty, but for permanence. This was not merely a residence. It was a sacred diagram of power made real. More than 100 tiered pyatthat roofs lifted upward across the palace grounds, each rising in diminishing layers toward the sky. At their peaks gleamed golden finials that caught the sunlight from dawn until dusk. From a distance, the palace appeared not as a fortress, but as a constellation, a city of gold floating above the plain. As one moved inward, the world narrowed and quieted. Within the hall of great audience, 48 massive teak columns rose from the floor, each one carved, gilded, and polished to a soft glow. They supported a vast roof that seemed almost to hover, suspended more by balance than by weight. Here stood the Lion Throne. Here the king faced his court. Royal decrees were delivered in a silence so complete that the faint sound of silk brushing against the wooden floor could carry across the chamber. Speech was measured, stillness was power. The king did not move casually within these halls. Every step followed ritual, every pause held meaning. The physical distance between one figure and another defined rank, authority, and fate. Hierarchy was not enforced through violence, but through space. Beyond the audience halls lay the glass palace, reserved for the king and the chief queen. Its name did not come from glass walls, but from mirrored surfaces and polished teak that transformed light into something almost fluid. Sunlight slipped across carved panels, fractured into gentle reflections, and softened the interior into a dreamlike glow. This was a world carefully sealed from disorder. Gardens unfolded beyond the halls, measured, symmetrical, restrained. Pavilions dotted the grounds, aligned along processional paths where ceremonies moved with mathematical precision. White umbrellas, the ancient emblem of sovereignty, drifted slowly above the royal presence during formal occasions. Gold-threaded garments shimmered beneath the tropical sun. Court officials moved in rehearsed formations. Time within the palace was not measured by hours, but by rituals. Morning audiences, afternoon consultations, evening ceremonies. Order was the rhythm of existence. And yet, this universe of harmony stood on fragile ground. By the late 19th century, imperial forces were advancing across Southeast Asia. Steamships replaced caravans, treaties replaced tribute, and the old systems of sacred kingship found themselves confronting a new and unforgiving world. In 1885, British troops approached Mandalay. There was no great battle, no dramatic siege, no final stand upon the walls. The gates opened. The last king and queen were taken into exile, carried away from the palace that had defined the center of their universe. With them ended more than a millennium of Burmese monarchy. The palace did not fall in flames that day. Its silence was far deeper than destruction. The royal city became a colonial military compound. Throne halls once filled with ritual and reverence were repurposed into administrative offices. Power remained inside the walls, but it no longer belonged to the dynasty that had built them. Architecture endured, but meaning shifted. Then came the 20th century, and with it a war that would consume much of Asia. In 1945, during the final months of World War II, fires swept through the palace grounds. Most of the original teak structures burned. The towering columns collapsed. The gilded roofs vanished into smoke and ash. For a moment, it seemed that the last royal city of Burma had been erased forever. What stands today is the result of reconstruction begun in the late 20th century. Using archival photographs, traditional measurements, and surviving foundations, Mandalay Palace rose again, not as imitation, but as remembrance. The geometry remains unchanged. The moat still traces its vast square. The bridges still cross at the four great gates. The central axis still leads the eye, and the body, toward the throne hall. And when the afternoon sun strikes the rebuilt gilded roofs, the palace glows once more, as it once did. But the sound has changed. Where musicians once played, there is now the quiet rhythm of footsteps on wooden floors. Where royal commands shape the destiny of a nation, there is the soft echo of history being remembered. Each year, more than 2 million visitors pass through these gates once reserved only for the highest officials of the realm. They stand where the Lion Throne once defined the center of the world. And in that moment, the palace becomes something else entirely. Not a seat of power, but a place of reflection. The moat no longer protects a king. It reflects the sky. The walls no longer guard a dynasty. They hold a memory. And the golden spires that once proclaimed absolute authority now speak of continuity, of a culture that endured loss without erasure. Mandalay Palace teaches a different meaning of luxury. Not the accumulation of objects, but the creation of a complete universe, ordered, symbolic, and beautiful. It teaches that even the most perfect geometry cannot resist time. And that reconstruction is not the denial of loss, but the transformation of it into identity. As the light begins to fade, the roofs shift from gold to deep amber, the water darkens, the walls dissolve into silhouette. And for a brief moment, past and present stand together in perfect balance. Thank you for walking through this royal city with us. If this journey has brought you a sense of calm and wonder, subscribe to the channel and continue with us to the next palace, the next empire, the next story waiting beyond another gate.